Thank you so much for having me. My name is Rose Funja. I am Tanzanian. I am an engineer by profession. My field is communication and information systems. I'm also a drone pilot. I run a business in the Agri-Tech, and it uses drones and satellite data to collect data and analyze and advise stakeholders in a certain value chain. So in this instance, it's actually agriculture. So how does it relate to climate change? We're working on we're using drones to collect this data, and we know that one of the current need is sustainability in agriculture, so which we call precision agriculture, which is basically understanding what is happening in the field, make a decision, and act on that decision towards increasing productivity. So that's how my field of work actually relates to climate smart agriculture and climate change as well. So I think that climate change needs to be addressed. And for me, I think it's both. It is a threat as well as an opportunity. Why is it a threat? It's because we're talking about climate change, which means that weather patterns are changing in a way that we're not used to, in a new way. So you sometimes have rainfall, sometimes you do not have rainfall. Sometimes it's hot, and then sometimes it's cold. So you cannot really predict or use traditional knowledge to act, because things are different right now. So, and why is it a threat? It is a threat because of that, we expect that water will be scarce. And because of that, we in Africa mostly depend on rain-fed agriculture. So droughts will mean that we do not have food. We do not grow, or we do not produce to the maximum that we expect to produce. So that is one thing. But then, of course, sanitation, it's another issue when it comes to water scarcity. And just everyday use of water. For example, in Tanzania, we also use water we depend on water for our energy production, electricity. So we use hydropower. So that is why I think it is a threat if we have less water. But then coupled with that is economic challenges. So agriculture is big in terms of the GDP in our country. Not so much in the income, but then it's big in terms of employment. It employs a lot of people, and part of the food that we grow, it's the food that we depend on living day to day. So economic challenges also come into play because of that. And another sector that we depend on is tourism. And tourism, that means we need to keep our animals happy in terms of those who are grass-fed. They depend on grass for their feeding. So if you do not have, if we have climate changes that affect that growth of grass, then we have issues. And like I said, again, energy. So economic challenges come into play. So that's why I think it's a threat for us. But then also, like I said, I also feel like it's an opportunity. And the opportunity comes in a way that in Africa, we're yet to be industrialized to the extent that our environment is not as polluted. So we have an opportunity for once to take a role and lead on the global stage on keeping our mechanisms, the traditional way we do things, and we do not pollute our environment. in a way that it threatens or it enhances climate change in a negative way. So that's the opportunity that we have. And yeah. Agri-Tech is the use of biological principles and tools in optimizing the agricultural processes and in a way to increase productivity. So my background, like I said, it's in engineering and in information technology. So one of the tools that we use is drones and satellite. And what they do is basically they do remote sensing. So they can collect data from a distance with a satellite, of course, kilometers away, but with a drone a few meters away from the ground, as when we're talking about agriculture. And these plants, when they're on the field, they have like biological principles. And those principles are the data that is being sensed from a distance, the remote sensing that we do, can tell us a number of things about the plant. It can tell us whether the plant is water stressed. It can tell us whether the plant is missing some sort of nutrients. And that is how we end up applying agriculture technology, Agri-Tech, in the agriculture field, because then being armed with that kind of knowledge help us to advise the farmer on how to do precise what to do on what areas of their farm, because the other kind of information that we collect is also GPS, the position. So for every position on the farm, we collect data about the plant. And when we decode when we analyze that data, we are able to say or to advise the farmer that you could do a fertilization by a certain amount on this area because it's doing well on its own. So you don't need to over fertilize. But then there are parts in this GPS position where you need a bit more fertilization because the plants are not doing well. And maybe also if it's a large farm, there are parts where the plants have really not grown. You can think of somebody who is planting paddy, and maybe they have some areas where they've missed doing seedling. And with us collecting that data, we can be able to advise this farmer on those areas that they've missed, or maybe something has happened, there's pest and all that. So all this information we are able to tell using that kind of technology. So it's basically the tools that we have that can sense remotely, but then also coupled with the behavior, the biological behavior of the plant. There's actually a correlation in terms of climate smart agriculture and Agri-Tech, right? And like I said, that Agri-Tech is basically using technology, which will be the kind of technology that we use, satellite and all that, to collect data. But then climate smart agriculture depends on somebody who is doing what we also call precision agriculture. That means being able to target application precisely in a way that they can, the amount of fertilizer that they use, the amount of pesticide that they end up using to be the right amount for maximum productivity. So that's the climate smart agriculture, to be smart on the decisions that you make and being armed with the information. And Agri-Tech helps you to do that. It helps you to get the information. It helps you to get the information. So the process behind the curtain is collecting the data, analyzing it, and getting the information out of it. And then with the climate smart, then it, let's say an advice could be do what we call spot spraying. or variable spraying. So don't do one size fits all, that if you have 1 acre, spray 10 kilograms of fertilizers. No, instead it will be you have 1 acre, and in this 1 acre of land, the information is on this half of the farm is doing very well, so you don't need to spray. The rest half is divided on parts that are not doing well and parts that are doing well. And in that, you can spray 10 kilograms on these parts and spray 5 kilograms on that other part. So it helps you to save costs. And that's the correlation that they have between the Agri-Tech and climate smart agriculture. So one feeds the other. So the tools and the technology feeds into the decision making and being smart about what you do on your farm and in your agriculture product business or production. Okay, so in terms of the uptake of climate smart agriculture for Tanzania and Africa at large, I would say that the uptake has been slow, but it has been progressively positive. These technologies are new to most of the farmers, and just as any technology, compare it to when mobile phones came in, people had to be educated around that. So I feel like there's been a wave of education, and in that case, education in all levels, starting with the leaders, all the way to the farmers. Yeah. So there's been education, there's been let's say, recommendations that have been adopted. When you're talking about Africa, you talk about Africa Union, and there's been recommendation that has been enacted at Africa Union advising the leaders to look at information and communication technologies, to look at digitalization technologies, and specifically drone technology in the agriculture space, and towards climate smart practices. And since then, when I started getting involved in this field around 2016, around that time, and since then we've been seeing a slow uptick up to when I think this year my president, Her Excellence Samia Suluhu Hassan, actually launched a plan to give land to the youth and to do block farming. And part of that was also a drone was also showcased in that case. As recently as the Agriculture Forum, the AGRF 2023, that took place not in Africa, actually in Tanzania, which is in Africa. It took place, it was hosted by Tanzania. Center stage was a drone. So you can see that in terms of awareness, that has gone leaps and bounds. So the next wave is actually now implementing that kind of technology. In my practice as part of business, we've been doing a lot of agriculture mapping and for advisory purposes. And now we're moving to agriculture spraying using drone as well. So, and we see that there's a number of requests that are coming through in which farmers are aware of the technology and the advantages that the technology can offer them in terms of them saving costs, because like I said, you are spraying not on one size fits all, but then you're spraying because the information that has come from the farm is that the plants needs a certain amount of let's say nitrogen fertilization for them to give to be at maximum productivity, and that's what you're spraying, and the drone can do that if you use the backpack system where a human goes around and do the spraying, then that cannot afford you or cannot give you the precision that you want in terms of targeting the plants, but then also in terms of limiting the amounts that you're spraying, and hence saving the soil and all that. Now, in terms of the ways that I would recommend to strengthen the uptake of climate smart agriculture will be in three folds, actually. So one will be around capacity building and support. So continuing education, but not only for the farmers, like I said, throughout the whole value chain. So talk about the leaders, but then also talk about the other players that are within that agriculture value chain, all the way to the farmers. So an education and building that capacity would help the uptake of that. But then also the other thing is these technologies come with a burden of an additional budget to the farm. So as much as they have a capacity of saving cost, it's also an additional cost in terms of the capital expenditure for the farmer. So we've seen instances in which the farmer will be aware that they need to fertilize to a certain extent, but they will not have the financing that they need to buy the inputs and do the fertilization for them to increase their productivity. So in terms of financial inclusion as part of capacity, I think that will help in the uptake and showcasing what the technologies can do. And then from there on, of course, becoming a normal practice. But then there's also infrastructure and development. The gadgets that we use, the drones themselves. We're talking about rural, operating in the rural. So you have to think about the drone. You have to think about something to carry the drone, because it's a heavy build drone. We're talking about 60 to almost sometimes 100 kgs. You can't carry that on your back. So you must have a vehicle that will drive that around. But then again, in terms of infrastructure, we're talking about it. Most of them run on batteries. So if they run on batteries, that means you either come in, invest on a generator, if you do not have reliable electricity where you're going to operate, which is the case in most of the rural areas. So you see that this is where infrastructure is actually needed. If you're able to get electricity, it reduces some of that cost. And if you're able to have roads that are passable easily and all that, then maybe you don't need a heavy duty kind of vehicle. You just need a small vehicle that will take the drone around. So infrastructure plays a huge part of that. But then also we're using gadgets that we mostly import. And most of them, of course, they're built to operate in Europe, to operate in Asia. That's the kind of market focus. Africa has a different kind of focus. So again, coming into infrastructure, research and development, thinking around that and being able to customize some gadgets that really work for us in the kind of setting that we have will also increase the uptake of practicing climate smart agriculture. And then finally, another angle will be community engagement and sustainability. So this will be engaging the communities around. We understand that in the African setting, the women are the ones that do the work on the farm. The men come in when it comes to the business part of the agribusiness that is being done. We also want to the youth to be part of the whole ensemble in terms of a business. So bringing that community around that will support the climate smart agriculture. So for me, actually, I tend to feel that when people ask how can the youth be involved in farming, then using such gadgets, digitizing is the place for the youth, because first it's something that has happened during it's savvy. Most of the youth are digital savvy. Flying a drone is almost like doing like playing some of those games that people play on a number of screens. So it comes easy with the youth. So for me, community engagement, letting the youth take part into the agriculture in a way with the digital gadgets and all that will increase the uptake of the climate smart agriculture. And then finally, of course, monitoring and evaluation, and keep on learning from the kind of information that we get on the ground, and we'll get there in a fashion way. So from the government angle, in terms of policy and supporting climate smart agriculture, there's been a number of ways, but in our world, which is the drone world, we have a number of ways that the government has been moving, but of course, not at a pace that most of the innovators like me would like. But it's actually moving. So, for example, before this year, we have had regulations for the drones that every drone operator has to follow. The kind of licenses that they have, we have to obtain, and the ways to obtain them. So some of them are a bit more expensive than it needs to be, and compared to other countries. And in other countries, I'm talking about the developed world, which will be like the US, where you can simply get online, do some online classes, and get your non-business permit to start flying some sort of a gadget for you to get experience. In Tanzania, you really have to go to class, and you have to spend almost 2 weeks in class, and you have to pay the amount of money that you would pay in the US will be around, actually, no, the first step is actually free. The one that you do on online classes, you get your permit to do experimental flying for free. But in Tanzania, we do not have that category. So the only category that we have, you have to go to class and pay close to $1,000 for you to get the piloting license. And then you have to now continuously be obtaining operational license at a cost, and it's in short time. So we're talking about, it used to be 1 year and now it's 6 months. So we've been moving, and that will be like a star case for Tanzania, because we've had enough trials in terms of using drones. Drones have been used for disaster recovery here. So when it comes to agriculture, the regulator is no stranger to that, and they operationalize that in the same way. So like I said, so this is positive, but then we still have a long way to go, because the drone sector changes every now and then. So you get a drone today, 3 years time, it's out of the manufacturer support. You need to get another gadget, a more improved gadget, just like the way the mobile phones keeps changing on a year or 2 year basis. that's how the drone space is also moving. And in agriculture, we started doing mapping, and now we're talking about doing spraying and spreading. So spraying will be for the for the liquid fertilizers, and spreading will be for the solids. Up to 0.5 millimeter kind of solids can be spread out. So you see that the technology keeps moving, and even though now we're there, there's still challenges that needs to be worked on in terms of maybe if you're talking about the issues in sunflower, let's say a sunflower seed is tilting down that way. So how do you get a gadget that can spray to a flower that is tilting down, and you need to have contact with the seeds? So there's a number of ways this technology is changing and improving on a daily basis, and the police is dragging behind as always, but it's there's been improvements. So that's what I would say. There's been some improvement. There's been some there's been improvement, like I said, but then it's slow improvement. What keeps happening here in Tanzania, so I hope that also happens in other African countries, is the stakeholder engagement. So we work very closely with the regulator, and when we have applications that are out of the norm, we are able to knock in, sit down and discuss, and probably think about having some sort of a sandbox where you can test while you're being monitored, and then everybody can learn about it, and then you can start thinking about policies around that. So in terms of financing, I've seen a lot of financing coming from the non-governmental and the development sector into this space, as opposed to financing that is coming straight from the government. The government has, however, put up a number of challenges. So we have innovation challenges, and those challenges will receive some sort of funding, minimal, of course, but that's about it to my knowledge. That has been what the African government or in speaking of Tanzania, I feel like that's the kind of contribution that has been put through. And I think the other role that they've played is basically because the non-governmental organization would not come to play if they're not invited by the government. So they've extended a welcome, an invitation in that sense, and because of that, then the non-governmental and the developmental world have poured some sort of financing into this sector. However, like I said, a lot more needs to be done. So a lot more in terms of public-private partnership, in terms of the infrastructures that are needed, having research into crops. So one thing that is happening in this sector is the rice that is grown in Tanzania is different from a different species of rice that is grown elsewhere, let's say in Asia or in the US if they grow rice, that is to say. So when we're talking about data-driven or climate-smart kind of agriculture, we're talking about having enough information about that kind of species in order for one to be able to prescribe. If you're talking about fertilization, then to be able to prescribe and say, for this kind of species and the kind of data that we are sensing remotely, then it needs a certain amount of additional fertilizer for maximum productivity. So because the species are different, that means doing the research in-house is really important. So you cannot only depend on data about other species from other countries. We need to collect data for our own species. So be it Tanzanian, East African. So having that kind of a database will go a long way in terms of being smart about the decision that the farmer needs to make for optimizing the agricultural businesses. So that's another area that I feel like probably the governments need to contribute more, because we're talking about learning more about our own species, doing remote sensing on that, collecting data, and having knowledge that you can now start running artificial intelligence on them. You can start teaching machines to understand that whenever they see this kind of leaf, then these are the kind of diseases that are possible, and that can be used now to advise the farmer. One area that the government has been putting a lot of money is on extension services. So overhauling extension services to not only being a blanket kind of advisory, but to start thinking about precision will contribute more towards being smart in a climate sense. So we no longer, with the kind of technologies and the kind of information that is available today, and the kind of also processing power that we have to teach our machines on different species of plants that we have, the kind of diseases that are being affecting these plants, and now to use those machines to quickly get information and advise farmers. We need that kind of, we need research. We need to be armed with those databases, and the farmer needs a bit of financing now onto acting. Once you have the information, you need to do action. Otherwise, the whole process has been for nothing. So taking action taking action will need the farmer to have a bit of financing. So financing is another angle that the government is putting money to support farmers. So we have agriculture specific banking, and those ones are focused on helping farmers and helping stakeholders who are working with the farmers to support these farmers to increase production. So some of the budgets go towards financing farmers. So that's how the governments are involved, and I feel like more has to be done, always more, because agriculture is big. We have a big population that is depending on agriculture for employment, but those are the elements that comes to play. Okay. So for a farmer that has never tried climate smart agriculture, they've just been using the normal traditional ways. I'll start by having a conversation with them and understanding what is the kind of production that they're getting right now. Is there any challenges that they're facing towards, is there any sort of challenge that they're facing? And to me, because I've done this before, an answer to that will be, we're being attacked by diseases that we've no knowledge of, or this has not been the norm in the past. We've been facing a bit of less production, and we think maybe it has to do with the soil, because we need more fertilization and all that. So you get a number of challenges that are coming from this farmer, and probably how they mitigate those challenges. And so the next thing that we'll do with such kind of a farmer is to try and get one plot in which we'll now practice will collect information on that plot, and maybe it will be a number of farmers. So think about farmers who are in the farming paddy. They'll mostly be in an irrigation scheme, a number of them, and we'll get one plot, and in that one plot, we'll start collecting data, understanding what is happening on that plot. And whenever we collect data, analyze, we'll go back and show them what we're seeing, and for them to confirm whether this is reality on the ground. So do a ground truthing with them for them to understand that. So once they do, the next thing is now how do we act depending on the information that we've received from that farm. Are we doing some fertilization? Do we see some diseases that we need to act on? So that will be next, and we'll do that. And then when it comes to harvest, we'll go in and do the harvest and do measurement. And then they'll also measure what they've also harvested in their plots. So the good thing is, when you're talking about paddy, the plots will most of likely be almost of similar size. So it's easy to see if somebody has gotten 3 or 4 bags of rice here, and you have a plot where you've collected data and act accordingly. How much have you harvested? And then they see the differences. So farmers learn by seeing. They're not so much onto being told, but to actually seeing it done. And that's how you get the buy-in from the farmer. So once they see that, then they understand, because they've been working with you, walking with you, and seeing what you're doing on that farm, seeing the information that you're collecting, and in the hope that in the coming season, those will be the converted ones. So that's a method that we use to work with farmers. So similarly, as we're getting into starting to do spraying for these farmers, we're going to do a similar thing, picking a plot, do spraying with a drone on that plot, and be it fertilization or spreading, and then look at the amount of fertilizer that is being used, but then also look at the productivity, the yield at the end, and compare that with the other farmers, the neighbors in that area, to get a buy-in on why doing spreading using a drone or spraying using a drone is better than doing the backpack one. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that we're all aware of what is happening climate-wise in the world, in which we all take part in. And we've just spoken on what are the threats and what are the opportunities that climate change comes with. Now, in terms of getting the advantages or mitigating what is happening with the climate change, we each have a role to play. And I'll speak from the agriculture angle, in which I feel like there's a number of ways that we can all take part in. So one way could be, you may not be a farmer, but you can be an investor, that you want to invest in technologies that can mitigate the climate change for the farmers in the agriculture sector. So that could be one thing that you can take on. But then you could also advocate for sustainable agriculture. So you could be somebody a stakeholder of some sort, and you can advocate and raise awareness for sustainable agriculture. And one way could be, these days people are talking about traceability. So what you put on your food, on your plate, what you buy, could be something that is related to sustainable agriculture. But then you could also be an educator having understood or having heard what we've been talking about here in terms of climate smart agriculture, you could dig in some more information within your community and within your friends and family, and you can educate them and you can open their eyes for those who are having challenges and do not understand what is happening to them. They've been farming in the past and it's been well, but today they're having a lot of challenges. Same piece of land, same crop they've been farming, but they're having a lot of challenges. So you could be an educator, opening their eyes on what is happening. You can also engage if you have some expertise, if you're from a technical angle, or you are somebody who understands the crops, because it takes both. Those of us who are bringing in the gadgets really need those who know the know-how, the biology and all that to work together. So you could be a mentor around climate resilient solutions. So we each can choose a role and figure out. So I've just spoken about investing. I've spoken about advocating. I've spoken about educating. I've also spoken about being able to engage in some projects. So pick a role, get working, because it needs all of us. It's not only you, it's me and the other person next to you. Each of us needs to come in and do something towards mitigating this climate change, and it's for the benefit of us all.